A sharp pain shot through my fingers, and I jerked my eyes open, my back drenched in cold sweat. The blinding lights of the basement, the excruciating agony of high heels crushing my finger bones. Mary's icy voice. "George, you're vile. This is your punishment." It all felt as if it were still happening before my eyes. But what greeted me was the familiar pale blue ceiling adorned with posters of my favorite basketball player from high school. The alarm clock on the bedside table reads. I sat up as if electrocuted, raising my hands, completely intact. No blood, no twisted or deformed knuckles. I rushed to the mirror where a long-lost youthful face stared back at me. Free of the wrinkles left by time or the pallid gauntness from prolonged confinement in the basement. Did I get reborn? I pinched my own cheek. The pain so real it made me want to cry. Memories flooded in like a tidal wave. Today, this very day was when everything changed. In my past life, my childhood sweetheart Mary was about to give up the national math competition. She had prepared for a whole year to take care of her boyfriend Tom, who had a high fever and me out of a for her own good mentality secretly told her parents. As a result, her parents forcibly dragged her to the competition. She competed in tears and won first prize, securing admission to Tsinghua University. Later, she became a successful entrepreneur of a rising star in tech. While I had an unremarkable college career and ended up working at her company by chance after graduation, when she discovered it was my betrayal that altered the course of her life, she framed me as a corporate spy, imprisoned me in the basement of her villa, and tortured me bit by bit, finally crushing my fingers under her heel. I trembled as I picked up the phone on the table, confirming the date was correct. Outside the window, the early autumn sunlight was just right, and the laughter of elderly people doing morning exercises drifted in from the neighborhood. Everything from my past life hadn't happened yet. I took a deep breath and looked at my reflection in the mirror, my youthful eyes gleaming with a coldness that didn't match my age. This time, Mary, I won't help you anymore. I quickly washed up and got dressed. In my previous life, I should have been anxiously waiting for Mary to appear at this moment, ready to persuade her not to give up on the competition. But now, I leisurely finished my breakfast and even spent an extra 10 minutes reviewing English vocabulary. At 7:40, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and headed out. According to my memory, Mary should appear at the neighborhood gate by 7:50, not heading to school, but in the opposite direction toward the bus stop, taking a ride to Tom's house to take care of him. I stood under the old locust tree at the neighborhood gate. Sure enough, at 7:48, Mary hurried over. She wasn't wearing her school uniform today, but a light blue dress, carrying a small purse instead of her usual large backpack stuffed with study materials. When she saw me, she visibly froze, her steps faltering. "George, what are you doing here?" Her eyes flickered nervously, fingers twisting the hem of her skirt. In my past life, I stopped her right here, pleading earnestly for her not to give up the competition when she insisted on going to take care of her boyfriend. I had no choice but to tell her parents in the end. But now I offered a harmless smile. "Woke up early, just taking a walk." "Where are you headed?" She bit her lower lip, hesitated for a moment, then whispered. "Tom has a high fever over 39 degrees. His parents are away on business, so I have to go take care of him." I nodded calmly, "Then go quickly. It's dangerous if a high fever isn't treated promptly." Mary widened her eyes, looking at me in disbelief. In my past life, I had been her academic supervisor, always urging her not to let romance interfere with her studies. "You're not going to persuade me to join the competition?" She couldn't help but ask. I shrugged. "That's your choice. Besides, Tom really needs someone to take care of him when he's sick." Her eyes suddenly reined. "Thank you for understanding, George. I'm actually very conflicted. I prepared for this competition for so long." "Go ahead." I interrupted her. "Don't waste any time." With that, I turned and walked toward the school without looking back. After walking a dozen meters, I finally allowed a cold smile to curl at the corner of my lips. "Mary, this time you can take care of your boyfriend to your heart's content and abandon your competition as you please. As for me, I have an entirely different life plan." Just as I reached the school gate, I was stopped by Mr. Chan from the math department. "George, have you seen Mary? Why hasn't she arrived yet? The final mock test before the competition is about to start." I showed a troubled expression. "Mr. Chen, I didn't see her this morning. Maybe something came up." Mr. Chen frowned. This child always dropping the ball at critical moments. If you see her, tell her to come to the math department office immediately. Okay, Mr. Chen. I obediently agreed. Though in my heart, I knew Mary wouldn't be showing up at school today. Entering the classroom, the students were all discussing the upcoming math competition. As the school's key seed player, Mary was naturally the center of attention. Why isn't Mary here today? The class monitor Leo asked me. She never misses math teen training. I put down my bag and said casually, maybe she has something to do. What could be more important than the competition? Leo shook his head in confusion. I heard the first prize winner can get direct admission to Tsinghua or Peking University. What a great opportunity. I didn't respond, just took out my textbook and started reviewing. In my past life, I would have been frantic with worry at this moment, concerned about Mary missing the competition. But now, my mind was unusually calm, even harboring a faint sense of secret anticipation. During the break for exercises, I excused myself with a stomachache and slipped into the empty classroom instead of going to the playground. Mary's seat was right in front of mine, her desk drawer stuffed with various competition materials and notes. In my past life, I had flipped through these notes, marveling at the ingenuity of her problem-solving approaches. Later, after she was admitted to Tsinghua University through recommendation, she gave all these notes to me. Unfortunately, my mathematical talent was mediocre back then, and I couldn't make good use of them. Now, I gently pulled out that thick math competition notebook and quickly skimmed through it. Since Mary had voluntarily given up this opportunity, perhaps these precious materials could be put to my use. I quickly took photos of the key pages with my phone and then returned the notebook to its original place. Although this rebirth gave me a chance to change my fate, my math foundation was indeed not as solid as Mary's, and I needed more preparation. During the last class in the afternoon, Mary still hadn't shown up. The homeroom teacher, Mr. Wang, asked if anyone knew her whereabouts and the whole class shook their heads. I noticed Mr. Wang glancing at me specifically. Everyone knew Mary and I were neighbors and had grown up together. As the school bell rang, I packed my bag to leave. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Mary. George, could you bring back all the competition materials from my drawer? I decided not to participate, and you might find these useful. I stared at the phone screen. In my past life, she had sent the same message, and at that time, I had replied with a long paragraph urging her to think twice. Now, I simply responded with 2 words, okay. As I packed up Mary's materials, my hands trembled slightly. These pages, covered in dense notes, had once been her stepping stones to a top-tier university. Now, they would become my own. Stepping out of the school gate, the setting sun stretched my shadow long. I took a deep breath, feeling the end of my first day after rebirth. This time, Mary, you take your broad road and I'll cross my single plank bridge. On my way home from school, I deliberately took a detour past the neighborhood where Tom lived in my past life. Mary had complained to me about how Tom's apartment was in an old building without an elevator, forcing her to climb 6 flights of stairs every time she visited. Now, standing at the entrance of the complex, I looked up at the dull gray residential building, wondering which window might belong to Tom. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Mary. George, where are you? Can you buy some fever-reducing medicine from the pharmacy near the school gate and bring it over? Tom's temperature has risen again. The corners of my mouth lifted involuntarily. In my past life, receiving this message had made me frantic. I immediately called her, urging her to forget about Tom and focus on the competition instead. But now I quickly replied, sure, what medicine do you need? Mary sent me a list of medications. I turned and headed straight for the pharmacy near the school gate. While buying the medicine, I deliberately chose the most expensive imported fever reducer and casually grabbed a few packets of instant drink mixes and vitamins. In my past life, Tom's illness had dragged on for nearly a week, with Mary taking care of him almost the entire time, ultimately causing her to miss the competition completely. Carrying the medicine bag as I walked toward the bus stop, my heart was unusually calm. In my past life, I could never understand why Mary would give up an important competition she had prepared for a whole year, all for a boyfriend she had known for less than 6 months. But now, with a 29-year-old soul in a 17-year-old body, I understood it wasn't love, it was rebellion. Mary had always been the perfect good girl, excelling in her studies, the model student in her teacher's eyes, and the pride of her parents. And Tom, that long-haired art student who played the guitar, represented the freedom she yearned for, but never dared to pursue. On the bus, I gazed at the passing streets outside the window, my thoughts drifting back to my past life. After Mary was admitted to Tsinghua University, she broke up with Tom within a semester. During college, she dated 3 boyfriends, each more unconventional than the last. It wasn't until after she achieved success in her startup that she married a finance guy from a similar background. Clearly, giving up the competition for Tom back then was nothing more than a fleeting act of rebellion. Shuxie Garden Station has arrived. Passengers, please. The electronic announcement snapped me out of my thoughts. Tom's house was even shabbier than I had imagined. The stairwell was cluttered with junk. The walls were peeling and the air was filled with a strange mix of mildew and cooking odors. I climbed to the 6th floor and had just raised my hand to knock when the door opened. Mary stood in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen clearly from crying. She was wearing an apron and holding a damp towel, and she visibly froze for a moment when she saw me. "You actually came?" Her voice was choked with emotion. I shook the bag of medicine in my hand. "Got the meds, plus some vitamins and instant drinks." Mary took the medicine bag, her fingertips icy cold. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to. How is Tom?" I interrupted her, peering into the room. "He just fell asleep. His temperature is 39.3 degrees. She bit her lip. "I've been trying to bring it down with physical methods all afternoon, but it hasn't helped much." I nodded, resisting the urge to ask her, "Is it worth it?" Like I did in my past life. Instead, I said, "Give him the fever reducer as directed on the label, and make sure he drinks plenty of water. If the fever hasn't gone down by tomorrow, it's best to take him to the hospital." Mary's eyes re-eamed again. "George, the competition. Don't overthink it." I patted her shoulder. "Taking care of the patient comes first." Her tears finally fell. I prepared for so long, but Tom, I watched her cry silently, feeling nothing inside. In my past life, seeing this scene would have broken my heart, and I'd have tried every way to comfort her. But now, I only find it ironic. She wants to be the considerate girlfriend while unwilling to give up the competition. Since when has the world offered such perfect deals? "I brought all the materials back for you." I pulled out the stack of competition materials from my bag. "Should I put them in your backpack?" Mary wiped her tears and shook her head. "No need. I'm not participating anyway. You can take them. Your math isn't bad either. These materials will be useful for you." I feigned surprise. "How can this be? This is all your hard work. Consider my thanks for helping me today." She forced a smile. "Anyway, I won't be needing them anymore." I didn't decline further and put the materials back into my bag. "Then thank you. Do you need me to ask for leave from the teacher for you?" "Mr. Chun, did he ask about me?" Mary asked nervously. "Yeah. He asked why he didn't take the mock test." I told her truthfully. I said I didn't know. She sighed in relief. "Thank you for not telling him the truth." "If my parents found out," I nodded. Of course, I understood. In my past life, it was my kindness that led me to inform her parents, and they stormed straight to Tom's house, dragging her away to the competition by force. After giving a few more instructions on how to care for the patient, I took my leave. As I reached the ground floor, I glanced back at Tom's window and smirked. "Mary, this time no one will disturb you while you nurse your boyfriend. Enjoy the consequences of your choices." Once home, I immediately locked my door and spread Mary's competition materials across the bed. These materials were priceless, containing not only past year exam questions and analyses she had painstakingly gathered, but also her original problem-solving approaches and techniques. In my past life, after she secured her spot at Tsinghua University, she gave these materials to me. Unfortunately, my math skills were too limited back then to make full use of them. Now I was different. Though my mathematical talent couldn't match Mary's, I had the mindset and learning methods of an adult. More importantly, I knew exactly what the competition would test. Mary had described the exam questions in detail to me after returning from the competition in my past life. I opened the notebook and began systematically studying her problem-solving approach. Mary's handwriting was neat and elegant with key steps and common pitfalls highlighted in different colors beside each problem. The more I read, the more astonished I became. Her mathematical talent was truly remarkable with many solution methods even our teacher hadn't covered. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. I quickly stuffed the materials under the bed and went to answer the door. Standing outside was Mr. Chen and my heart skipped a beat. George, is Mary home? Mr. Chen frowned deeply. Her parents said she hasn't returned and her phone is unreachable. I put on a worried expression. I'm not sure either. I haven't seen her since school ended. Mr. Chen sighed. This kid disappearing at such a critical moment. The national math competition is only 2 weeks away and she's our school's best hope. Maybe she had some urgent matter. I tentatively suggested. What could be more urgent than the competition? Mr. Chen shook his head. She's a contender for the national first prize with a chance to get directly admitted to Tsinghua or Peking University. I lower my head without speaking. Mr. Chen had said the same thing in my past life and back then I had wholeheartedly agreed. Now it just seemed laughable. So what if I got into Tsinghua through early admission? Didn't Mary still end up locking me in the basement and torturing me? If you manage to contact her, tell her to call me immediately. Mr. Chen handed me a note. This is my phone number. It's on 24/7. Okay, Mr. Chen. I obediently took the note. Closing the door, I let out a long sigh. It seemed Mary hadn't even told her parents. This was getting more interesting. I returned to my desk and continued studying the competition materials. This time, no one could stop Mary from paying the price for her choices. At 10 o'clock in the evening, my phone rang again. It was Mary. George, can you do me another favor? Could you bring my textbooks and homework to Tom's house tomorrow? I might not be able to go to school for the next few days. I replied, no problem. Do you need anything else? Nothing else, thank you. She quickly responded, then sent another message. Did Mr. Chen ask about me again? I hesitated for a moment before typing. He came to the house looking for you. Seemed really worried. I didn't tell him where you were. Thanks. Please don't tell my parents, she replied quickly as if afraid I might change my mind. Don't worry, I answered briefly, then turned off my phone. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts in turmoil. In my past life, I would have been tossing and turning at this moment, worrying about Mary's future and agonizing over whether to tell her parents. But now I felt unusually calm, even somewhat looking forward to tomorrow. Early the next morning, I went to Mary's house as agreed to pick up her textbooks and homework. Her mother's eyes were red and swollen, clearly having had a sleepless night. Has Mary contacted you? Her mother grabbed my arm, her voice trembling. This child has never stayed out overnight before. I shook my head. Auntie, don't worry. Maybe she's studying at a classmate's house. The competition pressure is intense. What classmate's house? Her father suddenly rushed out from the inner room, his face livid. We've called all her classmates. No one has seen her. I lower my head, hiding the indifference in my eyes. In my past life, it was her father's furious outburst that made me feel compelled to reveal the truth to save Mary. But now, I only think they deserve it. If she contacts you, tell her to come home immediately. Her father almost shouted. Where she can forget about having us as parents. Okay, uncle, I replied softly, taking Mary's school bag and leaving. On the way to school, I flipped through Mary's textbooks. Her notes were as neat and detailed as always, with a few love letters from Tom tucked between the pages, so nauseatingly sweet they made me sick. I casually tossed them into a roadside trash bin. While I got to school, Mr. Chen was waiting for me at the classroom door again. George, any news about Mary? I shook my head. No, Mr. Chen. What should we do, Mr. Chen rubbed his hands anxiously. The preliminary round is next week, and if she doesn't come for training soon, it'll be too late. I lowered my head to hide the amusement in my eyes. Maybe she's sick. Even if she's sick, she should answer her phone. Mr. Chen sighed. The principal has already inquired about it, saying they're counting on her to win an award this year. I didn't respond and silently walked into the classroom. The classmates were all discussing Mary's sudden disappearance with all sorts of speculations flying around. Some said something happened at her family. Others claimed she transferred schools, and there were even rumors that she was directly admitted to university through early acceptance. The class monitor, Leo, leaned over and whispered, George, you must know where Mary went, right? Aren't you neighbors? I shook my head. I really don't know. That's strange. Leo frowned. She cared so much about this competition. How could she just vanish? I shrugged without answering. Yeah, where did the Mary from my past life who cared so much about competitions go? Maybe she never existed. There was only an ordinary girl crushed by the expectations of parents and teachers longing to rebel. After school, I delivered the textbook to Tom's house as promised. Mary, who answered the door, looked haggard with heavy dark circles under her eyes. Are you okay? I asked, finding concern. She shook her head. Tom threw up several times in the middle of the night. I didn't sleep at all. I handed over the backpack, your textbooks, and homework. Oh, by the way, your parents are going crazy with worry. And so is Mr. Chun. Mary's face turned pale. My parents? What do they say? They said if you don't come home, don't consider them family anymore. I told her truly. Mr. Chun said the preliminary competition is next week. And if you don't start training now, it'll be too late. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. I can't abandon Tom. That's your choice, I said calmly. By the way, Mr. Chin asked me to tell you that tomorrow is the final deadline for registration. If you don't confirm in person, it will be considered a forfeit. Mary froze, tears hanging on her cheeks, neither falling nor retreating. I knew she was struggling at this moment in her previous life. She had hesitated, too, until I told her parents, completely cutting off her escape route. I need to think about it some more, she finally murmured. Suit yourself, I said, turning to leave, then added over my shoulder. Oh, if Tom still has a fever, try rubbing alcohol on his palms and saws. It brings the fever down quickly. Stepping out of the neighborhood, I looked up at the overcast sky. It was about to rain, just like the day in my past life when Mary was forcibly dragged to the competition by her parents. Only this time, who would the rain fall upon? On the day of the preliminary round, a light drizzle drifted through the sky. I stood outside the examination hall, clutching my admission ticket tightly in my hand. The raindrops hitting my face felt icy and piercing. The scene was eerily familiar. In my past life, I had stood in this very spot, but as a companion, waiting for Mary to finish her competition. George, what are you doing here? Mr. Chin's voice came from behind me. He was holding a black umbrella, raindrops clinging to his glasses. Are you here to compete? I nodded and held up my admission ticket. Yes, Mr. Chun. Mr. Chin's expression looked as if he had swallowed a fly. You signed up. When did this happen? Last week, I replied calmly. There happened to be a vacancy, so I filled it. This was of course a lie. In reality, from the day I learned Mary had definitely withdrawn from the competition, I had begun planning. I approached Mr. White from the competition committee and using information Mary had mentioned in my past life, claimed to be a second-tier candidate trained by the school. Coincidentally, this year's policy was relaxed, allowing each school to send an additional reserve contestant. Mr. Chun frowned deeply. But you haven't had any systematic training. I smiled and pulled out a stack of materials from my bag. I studied Mary's notes and methods on my own. Mr. Chin flipped through the notes, his eyes gradually widening. These are all Mary's problem-solving approaches. MHM. She lent them to me. I lied without batting an eye. I found them very inspiring. Mr. Chin's expression was extremely complex. A mix of delight at discovering a new talent and regret over Mary's absence. Finally, he patted my shoulder and said, Do your best. Don't feel pressured. Mary, well, never mind. The exam bell rang and I followed the crowd into the classroom. After sitting down, I took a deep breath and looked around. In her past life, Mary had described this exam hall. She said the sunlight was blinding at the window seat in the third row affecting performance. Now I was seated in the middle of the sixth row where the lighting was just right. The test papers were handed out and as I skimmed through them my heart raced. At least 4 major problem types were ones Mary had explained in detail in her past life. For the final combinator's problem, she had even provided a more elegant solution than the standard answer. I steadied my trembling hands and began answering. The questions that had once left me scratching my head now seemed clear and solvable, bolstered by both Mary's notes and my memories of her past life. Especially for that final combinator's problem, I could almost recall every step of Mary's explanation for back then. I finished the 2.5 hour exam 20 minutes early. After checking 3 times, I handed him my paper and left. Mr. Chan was anxiously waiting outside and immediately approached me when I came out. How was it? It was okay, I said modestly. A few questions were quite challenging. Mr. Chin seemed to hesitate but ultimately just sighed and said, "Go rest. There's still the practical lab session this afternoon." The afternoon practical session was my weak point. In my past life, Mary had once complained that this part was unfair because many schools lack the experimental facilities for proper training. To my surprise, one of the measurement tasks turned out to be almost identical to a practice session recorded in Mary's notes. Following the technique she had noted, I completed it smoothly. After all the exams were over, Mr. insisted on treating me to a meal in a small noodle shop. He kept asking about my problem-solving approach, and I cautiously answered by borrowing Mary's methods. As the conversation deepened, Mr. Chin's eyes grew brighter. "George, I never expected." He stammered excitedly. "Your thinking is very similar to Mary's, yet with your own innovations. If you perform normally, you might very well win the provincial first prize." I lower my head to eat my noodles, hiding my rising smile. Provincial first prize. In my past life, Mary had won the national first prize. But for me, the provincial award was already enough. "Any news for Mary?" I asked deliberately. Mr. Chen's face darkened. "She finally came home yesterday, but refused to explain where she had been all these days. The principal was furious and said he would revoke her recommendation for guaranteed admission." He shook his head. "Such a promising student ruined just like that." My grip on the chopsticks tightened. In the previous life, Mary was forcibly dragged by her parents to compete, tearfully completed the exam, and earned guaranteed admission to Tsinghua. But this time, she finally had the freedom to choose love at the cost of losing that privilege. Fair enough, isn't it? "How's her boyfriend doing?" I asked casually, pretending it was just a passing question. Mr. suddenly looked up. "Boyfriend? What boyfriend?" I put on a flustered expression as if I had let something slip. Maybe I got it wrong. No wonder. Mr. Chen slammed his fist on the table, drawing glances from other diners. I was wondering why she suddenly disappeared. "So, it's for a boy." His face turned livid. "Do her parents know about this?" I lower my head in silence, but that was enough. Mr. Sean immediately pulled out his phone and stepped outside to make a call. Through the glass window, I saw him gesturing animatedly, clearly informing Mary's parents. I leisurely finished the last bite of my noodles and wiped my mouth. "Mary, no one's forcing you to compete this time, but your little secret won't stay hidden either. I wonder how your dear parents will take the news." When I got home, I received a text from Mary. "Did you tell Mr. Chim about Tom?" I replied, "Sorry, I slipped up. He asked about you and I was too worried." She didn't respond again. I could almost picture her current situation. Parents furious, the school disappointed, her boyfriend's condition unstable. In her past life, she only had to focus on the competition, but now she had to face all the consequences of her choices. A week later, the competition results were announced. That morning, I had just arrived at school when I was called into the principal's office. Pushing the door open, I saw the principal, Mr. Chen, and several school administrators sitting inside, all with smiles on their faces. "Student George." The principal greeted me warmly. "Congratulations. First prize in the provincial division of the National Mathematics Competition, ranking 9th in the entire province." I pretended to be surprised, widening my eyes. "Really?" "Absolutely true," Mr. Chen said excitedly. "This is the best individual result our school has achieved in nearly 5 years. Tsinghua University's admissions office has already called to inquire about you." I lower my head, perfectly feigning shyness. "I just really like math." "Too modest." The principal laughed heartily. "According to policy, provincial first prize winners qualify for Tsinghua and Peking University summer camps. If you perform well there, you might even secure early admission." Leaving the principal's office, I became the center of attention throughout the school. In the hallways, classmates pointed and whispered, gossiping incessantly. Once unnoticed, I had overnight become the genius prodigy. Meanwhile, Mary's seat remained empty. Rumor had it she'd taken leave. During the break, class monitor Leo sidled up to me mysteriously. "I heard Mary's been grounded by her parents. Phone and computer confiscated, allowed only to go to school and back home every day." I raised an eyebrow. "That's serious?" "You bet." Leo lowered his voice. The whole school knows she gave up the competition to take care of her boyfriend. Her parents were furious. Heard they even went to Tom's house and made scene. I looked out the window. The campus looked especially fresh after the rain. In my past life, Mary had dumped Tom soon after winning the national first prize. But now she'd sacrificed her future for him. How long would this deep affection last? After school, I spotted Mary at the school gate. She stood alone in a corner, her face pale with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she walked straight over. "Congratulations." Her voice was 9th place in the province. "That's impressive." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Thank you. Tom is in the hospital," she suddenly said, "complications from pneumonia." I frowned slightly. "Is it serious?" "The doctor said if we'd brought him in 2 days later, it would have been life-threatening." Her voice trembled. "His parents blamed me, saying I delayed his treatment." I remained silent. In a previous life, Tom had just had a regular high fever and recovered within a week. But now his condition had worsened, probably because Mary lacked experience in caring for the sick. Or was this the backlash of fate? "George," she suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Could you help me plead with Mr. Chun to let me participate in the makeup competition?" Or I gently withdrew my hand. "The preliminary round is already over. You know that." But tears welled up in her eyes. "I can't lose my guaranteed admission. My dad said, if I don't get into Tsinghua, don't even think about coming home." Watching her breakdown, I felt nothing inside. In our past life, after she secured admission to Tsinghua, she casually told me, "Actually, I'm not that interested in math. It's just what my parents wanted." Now she'll finally have to take responsibility for her choices. "Sorry, I can't help you." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the rain. Back home, I opened my computer to check my emails. Sure enough, the invitation to Tsinghua University School of Mathematical Sciences summer camp had arrived. I clicked on the attachment and carefully read the participation requirements. In our past life, Mary attended this camp and later described the process and content to me in detail. Now that knowledge would be my advantage. The phone rang again. It was Mary. "Please help me. Just make my parents stop being angry. They'll only listen to the teacher now." I replied, "Mr. Chin will announce my admission to the math competition training class tomorrow. You could try applying, too. Though you won't make it in time for this year's competition. There's always next year." After sending the message, I smirked coldly. The training class had extremely limited spots, and given Mary's current state, there was no way she'd be selected. I was merely dangling a false hope in front of her, letting her struggle a little longer. Putting down the phone, I flipped open Mary's competition notes. These once belonged to her glory, but now they would pave my way to a top university. As for her, she'd remain stuck in the mud, reaping the bitter fruits she had sown. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the window pane like countless tiny fingers knocking. I drew the curtains, turned on the desk lamp, and began preparing materials for the summer camp. My era had only just begun. The day the special training class list was announced, the entire grade was abuzz. Standing before the bulletin board, I looked at the first name George on the red paper, my lips curling into an involuntary smile. The hushed whispers of classmates around me sounded like sweet background music. Who knew George was this good at math? He usually keeps such a low profile. And now he's made a stunning debut. I heard he's self-taught even better than Mary. I turned and walked away from the crowd only to bump into Mary, who was rushing over. Her face was pale and her school uniform hung loosely on her as if she had lost weight. When she saw me, she stopped in her tracks, her eyes quickly turning red. "Congratulations," she said hoarsely, as if she had been crying for a long time. I nodded. "Thank you. Did you come and check the list?" She bit her lower lip, her gaze shifting past me to the notice board. "Mr. Chen said, if I performed well, I might get into the special training class." I didn't speak, just stepped aside. Mary quickly walked toward the bulletin board. While I stood still, watching her trembling back. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a full minute passed. She didn't move an inch. Finally, she turned around. 2 distinct tear streaks marking her face. Her name wasn't on the list, which was inevitable. Mr. Chin would never accept a student who gave up a competition for her boyfriend. Why? She murmured to herself. I was clearly better than him. Those words pierced my ears like needles. I clenched my fists, nails digging deep into my palms. Yes, Mary, you were indeed better than me. But in this lifetime, talent isn't the only deciding factor. I'm going to find Mr. Chen. She suddenly shouted, dashing toward the teaching building. I didn't follow her, but instead headed in the opposite direction toward the math department office. Today was my first special training class, and there was no need to waste time on Mary's drama. Pushing open the door of the special training classroom, I saw 5 people already seated inside. Mr. Chen stood at the podium and immediately smiled when he saw me. George is here. Come in. We were just waiting for you. I walked to the only empty seat and sat down. Next to me was a girl wearing black-framed glasses, intently flipping through an English mathematics book. She glanced up at me, her gaze sharp as a knife. First of all, congratulations to everyone for passing the selection. Mr. Chen scanned the classroom with his eyes. This is our school's most elite advanced mathematics training class, which has produced 3 IMO gold medalists in the past 5 years. Your mission is to aim for the national finals and compete for the guaranteed admission spots to Tsinghua or Peking University. I glanced at the other students, recognizing 2 of them as senior-year upperclassmen, while the remaining 3 were in the same grade as me. In my past life, Mary had mentioned these individuals, calling them nerds and problem-solving machines. Today, we'll start with a small test. Mr. Chan distributed the exam papers. Let me understand everyone's strengths and weaknesses. Upon receiving the test paper, I quickly skimmed through it and my heart raced. This wasn't an ordinary test, but actual past IMO selection competition questions. In my past life, Mary had tested me with these very problems, and back then, I couldn't even solve the first question. Taking a deep breath, I began answering the questions. Thanks to Mary's notes and my past life memories, I smoothly solved the first 3 problems. The 4th question stumped me, and as I frowned and thought, a soft chuckle suddenly came from beside me. The girl with black-framed glasses had already flipped to the 2nd page and was swiftly writing with an expensive fountain pen. Her problem-solving steps were concise and elegant, flowing like a work of art. Time's up. Mr. Chen collected the papers while I still had 2 questions left blank. Mr. Chen graded them on the spot and the classroom was so quiet you could hear the sound of breathing. The girl with black-framed glasses was the first to be called. Sophie, 92 points, the highest in the class. Sophie, I remember this name. In my past life, Mary had mentioned that Sophie was the only math opponent she acknowledged who later went on to study at MIT. Leo, 85 points. Surprisingly, class president Leo was also on the list. I had no idea he was this strong in math in my past life. George, 78 points. I breathed a sigh of relief. This scorer placed me in the middle. Not outstanding, but not embarrassing either. At least it proved I wasn't solely relying on my past life memories and genuinely had the ability to stay here. After class, I approached Sophie on my own. Your problem-solving approach is quite unique. Could I ask for some advice? She pushed up her glasses and said coldly. The method you used for the 4th question was too clumsy. Mary would never solve it that way. My heart skipped a beat. You know Mary? I saw her at last year's provincial competition. Sophie turned to pack her bag. She should have been here. You used her notes but lack her spark. The word stabbed into my heart like a knife. Sophie was right. I had been mimicking Mary's problem-solving style, but I didn't need spark. I just needed results. I'll surpass her. I murmured under my breath. Sophie stopped what she was doing and looked at me properly for the first time. Interesting. Prove it to me. She tore off a piece of paper and wrote down a series of numbers. Here's my cue. Add me. You can ask me if you have any questions, but don't do it too often. I took the note, secretly delighted. A genius like Sophie was exactly the kind of help I would need in the future. As I walked out of the classroom, the sound of a heated argument reached me from the end of the hallway. Following the noise, I saw Mary and Mr. Chen outside the math department office. This isn't fair. Mary cried out, I'm better than him, better than all of them. Why can't I get into the special training class? Mr. Chen's face turned livid. Mary, you gave up the competition for personal feelings, and now you want to snatch someone else's opportunity. The special training class has limited spots. The school's resources aren't prepared just for you. I'll work twice as hard. Mary grabbed Mr. Chen's sleeve. Please give me another chance. Another chance, Mr. Chen shook off her hand. I called you over a dozen times on the day of the preliminary round. The principal went to your house personally to look for you and you for some boy. You threw away your entire future. Mary collapsed on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood at the corner watching coldly. In a previous life, at this very moment, she should have been preparing for the national finals, basking in the admiration of the entire school. But now she was just a foolish girl who had abandoned her future for love. George, someone called me from behind. It was the class monitor, Leo. Mr. Chen is looking for you. I nodded and deliberately walked past Mary. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of envy, anger, and pleading. I averted my gaze and knocked on the office door. Gain. Mr. Chen's expression had softened. George, have a seat. Did you receive the invitation letter for Tsinghua summer camp? I did. I took the envelope out of my backpack. Good. Mr. Chen smiled. The principal has decided to give you special tutoring which I'll be responsible for. Starting today, you'll have 2 extra hours of training after school every day. I feigned excitement. Thank you, Mr. Chen. I'll work hard. I have high hopes for you. Mr. Chen patted my shoulder. Though you may not be as naturally gifted as Mary, your diligence and steadiness are what truly matter in the long run. When I stepped out of the office, Mary was already gone. A small puddle remained on the hallway floor. Whether it was rainwater or tears, I couldn't tell. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself wholeheartedly into training, attending regular classes during the day, special training sessions after school, and additional practice at night. I often returned home late into the evening, yet still pushed myself to study until the early hours. Memories of my mediocre past life spurred me on. This time, I had to seize every opportunity. Mary occasionally showed up at school, always alone, her eyes hollow. Rumors spread among the classmates. Her parents had given up on her, they said, and she spent all her time hanging out with that Tom. One day in early June after the special training class, Sophie stopped me. There's a math salon this weekend. Want to come? What kind of salon? I organized it. She adjusted her glasses. There are a few college students and competition participants, all quite skilled. I agreed immediately. This was exactly the circle I needed, a high social network. Those people I could only look up to in my past life would now be my peers. On Saturday morning, I found a cafe at the given address. Pushing the door open, I saw Sophie and 5 or 6 others gathered around a long table in the corner with scattered drafts and coffee cups on the table. This is George, 9th in this year's provincial competition. Sophie, introduced briefly. A guy with an earring raised an eyebrow. The one who took Mary's spot. My heart raced, but I remained calm on the surface. I didn't take anyone's spot. She voluntarily gave up the competition to take care of her boyfriend. Is it true? A short-haired girl exclaimed in surprise. Mary is so strong, yet she gave up the competition for a guy. The guy with earrings sneered. The power of love, I guess. What a shame. She had a real shot at making the national team this year. I sat down quietly listening to them discuss Mary's downfall. These people who once admired her now spoke of her with nothing but pity and disdain. The shift in power and status was swift and absolute. The salon lasted until the afternoon, mainly discussing a challenging topology problem. I contributed an idea, earning a nod of approval from Sophie. As I was leaving, the guy with earrings patted me on the shoulder and said, "See you at Tsinghua summer camp next month." I got an invite, too. His name was Zach, last year's national silver medalist who had already secured a spot at Tsinghua University. I mentally noted this information. Someone with Zach's background would be valuable connections at Tsinghua in the future. In early July, the school entered its final exam review period. Mary completely disappeared. It was said her parents had withdrawn her from school. Rumors about her multiplied. Some claimed to have seen her pulling all-nighters at internet cafes. Others said she was working at a fast food restaurant, and there were even whispers she was pregnant. I had no time to concern myself with such gossip. Focusing entirely on preparing for the upcoming Tsinghua summer camp. Drawing from Mary's experience sharing in my past life, I had already studied the camp's assessment priorities and tailor my preparations accordingly. The day before final exams, I ran into Mary's mother at the school gate. She had aged significantly, her hair gray and her eyes vacant. Spotting me, she suddenly rushed over and grabbed my hand. "George, have you seen Mary? She hasn't come home for 2 weeks." Her voice trembled. I shook my head. "Auntie, I haven't seen her for a long time either. If you see her, tell her that her mother misses her very much." She choked back tears and released my hand. Her father's words were just spoken in anger. "The door will always be open for her." I nodded in agreement, but thought to myself, too late. In her previous life, Mary sailed smoothly under her parents' arrangements, never understanding the price of freedom. In this life, she chose rebellion and must bear the consequences. On the day the final exams ended, the official notification for Tsinghua University's summer camp arrived. The principal summoned me personally, giving me 1,000 yuan for travel expenses and a new suitcase. "The school is proud of you," the principal said with a beaming smile. "If you secure the Tsinghua recommendation, there will also be a scholarship." On my way home, I stopped by an internet cafe to look up some information about the summer camp. Pushing open the smoke-filled glass door, I spotted Mary in the corner at a glance. She was wearing a grubby t-shirt, her greasy hair clinging to her face, playing games with a few local youths. I had intended to leave quietly, but she suddenly looked up and our gazes collided midair. Her eyes widened and the cigarette in her hand dropped onto the keyboard. "George," she called out hoarsely. I had no choice but to walk over. "Long time no see." She looked me up and down, taking in my brand new school uniform and the Tsinghua envelope in my hand, her lips twisting. "So high and mighty now, top student. You doing okay?" I asked, knowing full well the answer. "Just great?" She laughed exaggeratedly, drawing sidelong glances from her companions. "Free as a bird, doing whatever I want. Way better than being some math genius." I noticed a few faint cuts on her wrist and a bruise near her collarbone. Following my gaze, she abruptly pulled up her collar. "What about Tom?" I asked. "At work," she said, lighting another cigarette. "Apprentice at a car repair shop, $80 a day." I don't know what to say. In the previous life, Tom later got into an art college and became a somewhat famous designer. But now, both he and Mary have slid on to completely different life paths. "Heard she going to Tsinghua's summer camp." She exhaled a smoke ring. I nodded. "Leaving tomorrow." "Congratulations." Her voice suddenly turned low. "That should have been mine." I remained silent. Yes, this was originally her glory, her future. But in this lifetime I would never hand it over willingly. "I'm leaving. Take care." I turned and walked away. "George," she suddenly called out to me. If you hadn't told my parents about Tom back then, would things be different for me now?" With my back still turned to her, I took a deep breath. "Mary, it was your own choice to give up the competition. No one forced you." Stepping out of the internet cafe, the sunlight stung my eyes. Mary's question echoed my mind. If I hadn't snitched in my past life, would she have gone to compete? If I stop her this time, would she be happier? No. I shook my head. Everyone should be responsible for their own choices. In this life, I chose to strive. She chose to rebel. That's all there is to it. Back home, I started packing for summer camp. My phone vibrated. Message from Sophie tomorrow. Train T42 carriage 8. Zach and I will be there coming together. I replied, sure. Putting down my phone, I gazed out the window. The setting sun dyed the sky blood red. Starting tomorrow, a brand new life awaited me. As for Mary, I recalled her hollow eyes and the scars on her wrists one last time, then sealed her image deep within my memories. Tsinghua Garden was even larger than I had imagined. Dragging my suitcase behind Sophie and Zach, I walked through the lush campus. The July heat in Beijing was stifling, and my shirt was soaked through, but excitement overpowered all discomfort. Math camp registration is at Xing Apartments, Zach said, pointing at the map. He had been here last year and knew the place well. A line had already formed in front of the long table at the registration desk. Standing in the queue, I sized up my future competitors. Most of them wore thick glasses with serious expressions, clearly top academic achievers from various provinces. Name? The senior student at the registration desk asked without looking up. George? She flipped through the roster and suddenly raised her head. Ah, so you're that George? Professor Smith specifically mentioned you. My heart skipped a beat. Professor Smith. Professor Smith, the deputy director of our mathematics department. The senior student smiled brightly. He said, "Your problem-solving approach in the provincial competition was unique and wants to mentor you personally." I suppressed the urge to smile. Professor Smith, Mary's mentor in my past life, who later became a crucial connection in her entrepreneurial journey. Now he's noticed me. After collecting the room, key, and materials, we headed to the dorm. It was a 4-person room. Besides Zach, my roommates included Alex from Shandong and Ethan from Shanghai, both gold medalists from their respective provincial competitions. In comparison, my 9th-place finish in the provincial contest seemed rather unremarkable. "So, you're George?" Alex looked me up and down. "Heard you edge out some girl named Mary." My hands paused while arranging the bed sheets. "She didn't participate in the competition, so edging out doesn't apply." "That's odd." Ethan adjusted his glasses. "Professor Smith mentioned her last year in Shanghai. Said she was a once-in-a-generation talent." Zach chimed in. "Gave up the competition for love, I heard. Moved in with some local troublemaker." The 3 of them let out meaningful chuckles. I didn't join in, but neither did I correct them. Letting Mary become the butt of after-dinner jokes was more satisfying than any revenge. The first day of the summer camp was the entrance test. The exam was held in a spacious lecture hall with nearly 100 students hunched over their papers, writing furiously. The difficulty of the test far exceeded that of provincial competitions, and fine beads of sweat formed on my forehead. There were a few problems I had no clue how to solve. After handing in the exam, Alex and Ethan excitedly discussed their answers while I remained silent. In my past life, Mary had once mentioned that the test at Chinua summer camp wasn't crucial. What mattered more were the subsequent project performance and the impression made on the mentors, but performing too poorly could still lead to early elimination. The results were posted that afternoon on the math department's bulletin board. I squeezed through the crowd, scanning the list from the bottom up. 58th place, slightly below average. Alex was 12th, Ethan 9th, and Zach 15th. The top spot went to a Jiangsu candidate named Ryan, who scored a perfect mark. "Don't lose heart," Zach patted my shoulder. "Your foundation is a bit weak, but Professor Smith sees potential in you. That's what really matters." I force a smile. In our past life, Mary ranked 3rd in the entrance test and soared effortlessly from there. As for me, it seems I'll have to take a much harder path. After dinner, I wandered aimlessly around campus and found myself standing before an office building. A light was still on in a 3rd-floor window where a shadowy figure could be faintly seen moving, almost as if drawn by some unseen force. I stepped inside, knocking on the door of room 302. A deep male voice responded from within, "Come in." Professor Smith was younger than I had imagined, in his early 40s, with sharp eyes beneath thick eyebrows. He sat behind a desk piled high with books grading assignments. "Are you George?" He set down his pen. "I've reviewed your exam." My heart sank to the pit of my stomach. "I must have disappointed you." "Quite the opposite." He gestured for me to sit. "Your problem-solving approach is unique. Although the results were incorrect, there were flashes of brilliance in your process. Especially on question 7, you used an unconventional method." I was slightly surprised. For question 7, I did imitate an obscure technique from Mary's notes, but a calculation error caused all the results to be off. "I've seen your provincial competition answer sheet," Professor Smith continued. "The style of that constructive proof is very similar to a girl named Mary from last year. Do you know each other's schoolmates?" I answered cautiously. "Why didn't she compete this year?" Professor Smith frowned. "I've been waiting for her." I carefully chose my words. "She gave up the competition for personal reasons." "What a shame." Professor Smith shook his head. "Talent like hers is rare, yet she doesn't know how to cherish it." He turned to me. "You may not be as naturally gifted as her, but you're more diligent. If you're free these evenings, come find me. I'll give you some extra coaching." Stepping out of the office building, I let out a long sigh. In my past life, Mary's brilliance was so overwhelming that even Professor Smith couldn't forget her. But now, this opportunity belongs to me. For the next 2 weeks, I attended summer camp activities during the day and studied in Professor Smith's office at night. His expertise in combinatorics happened to be my weak spot. Under his guidance, I made rapid progress. In the second week's topic presentation, I teamed up with Sophie and Zach to study graph theory applications and secured second place in our group. Professor Smith specifically praised my innovative thinking during the review. Though in truth, it was just an idea Mary had mentioned in my past life. The last day of the summer camp was the admission interview scheduled for the afternoon. I spent the morning holed up in my dorm revising my self-introduction. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was a message from my mom. "Mary's mom is looking for you. She says it's urgent." I frowned. What could Mary's mother possibly want from me? After replying to my mom that I'd call back later, I turned my phone to silent mode and focused entirely on preparing for the interview. The interview room was occupied by 5 professors, including Professor Smith. The questions ranged from academic to personal, covering all aspects. The final question came from Professor Smith. "If Tsinghua admits you, what do you plan to do in the future?" In her previous life, Mary's answer was to explore the mysteries of mathematics, but she later became an entrepreneur. This time, I gave a different answer. "I want to use mathematics to change the world, perhaps through tech entrepreneurship." The professors exchanged approving glances. Professor Smith smiled and said, "A noble ambition. Mathematics needs to be applied, not just remain theoretical." The interview ended and I walked out of the classroom feeling lighthearted. Whatever the outcome, I had done my best. As soon as I turned on my phone, a flood of unread messages and missed call notifications poured in, all for my mom. The latest one read, "Mary is in trouble at the hospital. Her mom wants to see you." After much hesitation, I finally took a taxi to the hospital. On the way, my mom told me that Mary had attempted suicide by cutting her wrists and was now in the emergency room at People's Hospital. In the emergency room hallway, I met Mary's parents. Her father looked haggard and her mother's eyes were swollen like peaches. When she saw me, her mother rushed over and grabbed my hand. "George, please talk to Mary." She sobbed uncontrollably. "The doctor said she's showing signs of depression and refuses to cooperate with treatment. What can I do?" I asked awkwardly. "She kept calling your name," Mary's father said hoarsely, saying she was sorry, that she stole your opportunity or something. Just rambling. I followed the nurse to the ward. Mary lay on the hospital bed, her left wrist wrapped in thick gauze, her face as pale as paper. When she saw me, her vacant eyes suddenly focused. "You came." Her voice was raspy. "Congratulations. Tsinghua must have accepted you, right?" I stood at the foot of the bed, not moving closer. "The interview just ended. The results aren't out yet. You'll definitely get accepted." She smiled bitterly, just like in the previous life. My blood froze instantly. "What did you say?" "Nothing." She averted her gaze. "I had a very long dream where I went to Tsinghua, started a successful business, and you." She suddenly stopped. "Just a ridiculous dream." I carefully observed her expression, confirming she was just speaking casually, and only then did I relax. Why do foolish things? I changed the subject. "Tom left." She stared at the ceiling. "He said I was too depressing and found someone else. I've lost everything. My studies, love, family." I remained silent. In the previous life, Tom did break up with Mary, but that was after she got into Tsinghua University and it ended amicably. This time, their relationship ended in a much crueler way. "George," she suddenly looked at me. "If I had gone to the competition back then, would things be different now?" It's this question again. I sighed. There are no what-ifs in life. "Yeah." She closed her eyes. "You can go now. I want to sleep." By the time I left the hospital, it was already dark. I turned on my phone and saw a message from Sophie. "The recommendation list is out and you're on it. Come back to school ASAP." I stood at the hospital entrance looking up at the night sky. At this moment, the trajectories of my past and present lives completely diverged. Mary lay in the hospital bed while I received the Tsinghua recommendation. The scales of fate had finally tipped in my favor. Back at Tsinghua Garden, the bulletin board was already surrounded by a crowd. I squeezed in and saw my name on the list of recommended admissions. George, number 1, High School of Nanjing Province, admitted major, Computer Science and Technology. But I clearly applied for mathematics. Just as I was puzzled, Professor Smith walked over. "I changed your major for you. You said you wanted to start a tech business. Computer science is more suitable." Suddenly, it all made sense. In my past life, Mary studied mathematics and faced many setbacks when starting her business. This time I'm taking a more pragmatic path. Thank you, Professor, I said sincerely. Don't celebrate too soon, Professor Smith said gravely. The admission is just the beginning. The computer science department at Tsinghua is fiercely competitive. You'll need to work twice as hard. When the summer camp ended and I returned to Nan City, I became the talk of the school. The principal received me personally. Local media came for interviews, and even the mayor sent a congratulatory letter. All of this should have belonged to Mary. The day after returning home, I went to the hospital to visit Mary, only to be told she had already been discharged. The nurse said her parents had forcibly taken her away and sent her to a closed rehabilitation center. When senior year began, Mary's seat was empty. The homeroom teacher announced she had taken a year off, sparking whispers among classmates. I tuned him out, burying myself in advanced college coursework. The admission was just the beginning. I needed to prepare much more. On a weekend in September, I ran into my middle school classmate Mike at the computer mall. He now works in computer repairs. And during our casual chat, he brought up Mary. Heard she's working at KFC, he said mysteriously. My cousin saw her last time wearing a mask while taking orders. I feigned surprise. Really? Didn't she drop out of school? Who knows? Mike shrugged, ruining such a bright future for a guy. What a waste. After returning home, I inexplicably searched for the addresses of KFC outlets in our city. The next day at noon, I went to the KFC in Central Square and sure enough, saw Mary behind the counter. She was wearing a KFC uniform, her hair tied into a ponytail with heavy dark circles under her eyes. As I stood in line to order, our gazes met, her pupils constricted abruptly, and the tray in her hand nearly fell to the ground. Hello, what would you like? She asked mechanically, pretending not to recognize me. I ordered a combo meal and deliberately flashed my Tsinghua University student ID while paying. She stared at the little red booklet, her lips trembling slightly. When picking up the order, she whispered, "Congratulations." "Thank you." I took the tray. "Still working at KFC?" "Yeah." She turned around and I noticed a faint scar on her right wrist. "Next month, I'm taking the adult college entrance exam, trying to see if I can get into a junior college." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Good luck." "George," she suddenly asked. "Have you ever thought about how things would be now if you had made a different choice back then?" My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." She smiled bitterly, "Wishing you a happy life at Tsinghua." Watching her push her bike away into the distance, I tightened my grip on the wallet in my hand. Inside lay the freshly acquired Bitcoin transaction receipt and the blueprint of my brand new life. Yes, Mary, we did make different choices, and the results, as you can see, are entirely different.